Hi, we're here today with Betsy Randolph. We are doing interviews with all of our authors that are in the Rough Country Anthology. We're excited to have you today, Betsy.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you guys. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, could you tell us a little bit about you and about your story that you wrote?
Sure. So Betsy Randolph, I am a retired Oklahoma State Trooper, worked in law enforcement for about 27 years here in Oklahoma. And during that same time period, was also in the Army Reserves, was a military police officer and an NCO officer, and was also a drill sergeant. The last 7 years of the almost 12 years that I served was as a drill sergeant with the 95th Division. And so, but I'm a mother and a grandmother, and I have 7 grandchildren. And I absolutely love life. I love to write. I've always written, it seems like. I've written since I was a kid. I don't know how much of it's good, but I do write. And really just enjoy all the blessings that God has given me. I know it's undeserved, but I really do enjoy my life, and especially the retirement life.
Tell us a little bit about your story. It's called If Only a Policewoman's Heartache.
Well, okay, so when Casey asked me to write, to submit something in the hopes that it would be good enough that it would be picked up to be included in this anthology, knowing that obviously he had some influence, I think, on the editor, but he told me specifically that he didn't tell Rebus who to pick and who not to pick. And so my hope was that I could write something that would be not old Western, even though I do write some historical Western fiction. I wanted to write something that would be, something that would be more contemporary, but still obviously set west of the Mississippi River. So it would be considered Western, and that it would have a really strong female protagonist. And so I wrote a story that is fiction. However, it is loosely based on a true story. If you ever are just bored out of your mind at 1:00 in the morning and you want to Google Betsy Randolph in the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, you might find something similar to the story that I've written. And so If Only came about, and probably we could really shorten that to just say If Only, because I think people in law enforcement, not just women, but people in law enforcement always have, regrets. And maybe everybody has regrets, no matter what profession that you're in. I do find it interesting that only law enforcement people are expected to do the right thing, make the right decision with a split second to decide, and they have to live with the consequences. And they do that. And you say, if you're in law enforcement, you just say you're in law enforcement. You don't get to say like a medical professional or a legal professional and say you're practicing. If I were to say I'm practicing law enforcement, I probably would be run out of town, However, I do find it very interesting that it is a fine art. It's a science. It's much like growing something. If you ever grow anything, it's part of it is magic, and the other part is the science, the knowledge of doing it. And that's kind of what law enforcement's like. You have all these different hats that you have to wear and all these different jobs that you have to juggle at one time, and you're expected to be right 100% of the time with 100% of the people. And so this story came about because of something that did happen in my life, and it was very hard for me to go through. And God, I'm such a crybaby. I'm so sorry. It was very hard for me to go through. And so when Casey asked me to write a story, or he asked me to submit something, I wanted to do something that meant something to me, because I knew it was going to go into this anthology that was going to support survivors of, U.S. Marshals around the country. And so I wrote this story knowing that not everybody was going to understand what this character went through, and that's okay. But people in law enforcement will, and that's what mattered to me.
That's beautiful. I think, so many people need those kind of eye-opening experiences to read through somebody else's experience and get a different perspective that maybe they haven't thought about. And I think that's something that your story does so beautifully. There's definitely this idea of kind of hindsight and maybe regretting or rethinking your past choices. And Linda seems very focused on, should I have done something different, or did I make the right choice, like you said, in those split-second moments? So is that part of what inspired you to write this, is trying to kind of recognize the emotional weight that so many first responders have to carry?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted people to understand that, yes, it's a fictional story, but there are so many aspects to being in law enforcement and to carrying out those day in and day out, the drudgery, I guess I just wanted people to understand that, yes, it's fiction, and I'm hoping that it'll be entertaining, but at the same time, I think I've said this before, I know I've said this before, is that there's always a little bit of truth when you joke about stuff. And even the best liar will always tell a little bit of the truth. Bad guys will always tell you the truth and what their intentions are if you listen. And I would always tell young recruits that if bad guys tell you that they're going to do something, or they touch a part of their body, they're telling you where their weapon is. They're telling you what their intentions are. When you ask them, do you have any warrants? And they look away. Yes, they have warrants. You just need to find out what county it's in or what state it's in. So my hope is that, obviously, is that this brings, the anthology will bring to light the difficulty that law enforcement professionals around the country go through, but also that there's so many relationships, because that's one thing I think it's funny. And a lot of friends of mine would probably crack up if they read this story, because they could see some of those characters. And I think that's really fun to do when you write, is that all of your experiences go into your different characters, people that people that you just see, their quirks, and they get to go into these funny fictional characters. And so I actually called a buddy of mine, or sent him an email, and I said, hey, I'm writing this story, and I'd really like it to be loosely based on you. Your name is altered, but it's similar. But he looks damn good in ripstop, cargo pants. And I said, do you care if I do this? And he goes, not, I don't care, as long as you send it to me to look over first. Did I? No. He'll get to see it if he buys a copy, because he needs to buy a copy, because it's going to go for a worthy cause.
So the main character is Linda, and she has this really interesting path. She starts in law enforcement and transitions into journalism, and then finds herself back in the law enforcement space. Tell me a little bit about creating that character and kind of what drew you to that full circle kind of moment.
Well, so thank you for asking that question, Ellen. What happened with Betsy Randolph when she was growing up? Betsy Berg, my maiden name. My mom really wanted me to be in journalism, and she really pushed me that direction, and I did pursue it. I got an associate's degree in journalism, but I realized that I did not like deadlines all that much. And whenever the college paper that I was working for, every Tuesday at deadlines, I would get a migraine headache. And if you've never had a migraine, you're very fortunate. if you do suffer from migraines, then you know what I'm talking about. Every Tuesday, I would get a migraine. And I hated it. I hated everything about it. I loved to write. I just didn't want that pressure. I couldn't deal with that pressure of pumping something out and getting it past, whoever your editors were, to get something published every Tuesday. Anyway, so I wanted to have a character that understood both worlds that I kind of grew up in. I did radio for many years growing up. And my dad started a Christian radio station in Enid, Oklahoma when I was 11, 15, something like that. And I started working in radio and then worked in different radio stations around the country, a radio network in Dallas. And I thought that that was my career path. But the truth is that, and I told you guys this before, is that when I was 5, Adam 12 was the love of my life. TV show on in the 70s, and I loved it. And I had a little Adam 12 little metal lunchbox that I carried to school in first grade. And the little girls in school told me I couldn't be a police officer because there weren't girls in law enforcement back then, or that many of them. And I just knew that that's what I was called to do. And so I didn't care what they said. I didn't care what anybody said. I knew that that's what I was going to do. And so it was a struggle to get into law enforcement, but only because I didn't know anybody and nobody I was related to had been in law enforcement. I went military police, and so that with the Army Reserves, and so that gave me an opening to get into law enforcement. But I told my mom, I don't think you realize just how stressful it is. Of course, in her mind, she's like, but carrying a gun and maybe wrestling with a drunk on the side of the road is not stressful. Getting shot at, maybe not as stressful. Getting beat up, not as stressful. But it wasn't. And what's so funny is that after many years in law enforcement, I got offered a job to come to the Public Information Office and be a PIO and work and deal with the media. And because I had the journalism experience and I had that radio experience, I knew what they wanted before they even asked. And I knew how to get the information for my people, show up at a scene and get the information for my people and not make them mad, and then pass it on to the media people without making them mad, giving them, making everybody happy. I was that buffer between. And so it worked. It was absolutely perfect. It was the best job I ever did. I just wish I could have kept it for very long. I kept getting fired because of this thing right here. So, but it was a great job and I loved it. I was there for 3 separate times with the Highway Patrol. I was the spokesperson for the Highway Patrol and for the Department of Public Safety, and really enjoyed that job. And of all the time that I spent with DPS, those 25 years, that was probably my most favorite. That and working up here north of Oklahoma City in Logan County, just being a local, a county trooper. It was a lot of fun.
I think one thing that your story hits on so well is tied to those first responders and the law enforcement and a lot of the kind of cumulative trauma that builds up over time. So I wanted to know if was highlighting their mental health and that aspect of the job kind of one of the things you set out to do when you were writing this?
Absolutely. And I don't really even think, Janae, that I've put too much thought into doing that. It just kind of seemed like it was the right thing to do because it was real. I really did struggle with this issue with this person. It was a real thing that happened in my life. And I got fired from my Public Information Office job because I said on Geraldo or CNN or something that I wish I had killed the beheading suspect when I had the opportunity. I didn't use profanity like in the story I do. And I kind of wish I hadn't used so much profanity in there, but it is what it is. I am a cusser. I love Jesus, but the truth is I do cuss a lot. And I think a lot of that has to do with both my law enforcement and my military. So if I happen to say some bad words, just bleep those out. But I did want to make sure, and to get back to answer your question, I wanted to make sure that people, maybe not even people, but just to acknowledge for myself that having having cumulative trauma, there's no shame in it. You know, a lot of people in the military and in law enforcement both, they don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to acknowledge that they've ever gone through anything that alters them as a person, alters their personality or how they do their job or how they look on life. But that's nonsense because it does. There's no way around it. And I remember speaking at a conference, a public information officer conference in Clearwater, Florida, a few years back. And I said something like, if you can make a next of kin notification and not be emotionally moved by it, there's something wrong with you. You need to go get some help. And I could see guys out in the audience shaking their head no. And I'm like, okay, I know what's going to happen to you. I know what's going to happen to you because I've seen too many people just like you who think, you know, that's never going to happen to me because I'm such a badass and I'm such a tough guy. And okay, yeah, until something else. Yeah, all these little things that chip away at who you are and what a tough guy, your exterior and all that stuff. Cumulative trauma doesn't care how tough you are. You can be a Green Beret, you can be an Army Ranger, you can be a whatever. It doesn't matter. At some point, something is going to happen in your life and it all comes tumbling down. It's like all these dominoes. And you eventually have to address the elephant in the room. You have to. Or you'll take care of it or it'll take care of you, just like the characters in the story say. And so I tried to insert, because we had a very short word count, to be able to insert some of those, what I call words of wisdom, not from Betsy Randolph, but from mental health professionals worldwide that say, there is help available. Don't be such an idiot. Don't be so proud that you can't come and ask for help. And I think just like Linda in the story where she finally had to get, you know, suspended from her job. And her buddy is saying, hey, this could probably help you get back to work if you would go and do this EMDR. And I know I don't know if you know anything about that, or I touched on it very briefly. And the reason that I had the characters, like the one character, her buddy Stacy, give her the piece of paper for her to read. And she actually hears it. She says it out loud so that you can understand what it is that we're talking about. Because otherwise, a lot of people do think it's hocus pocus. And when I first heard about it, that's what I thought it was, hocus pocus. Just some silly stuff. But all I can tell you is it worked for me. And it helped me not get my job back, because I think I was past that point. But it was a deal where I could go forward and not just work, but be able to work with other people and be a good wife and be a good mother and be a good, if that's possible, and be a good grandmother. Strengthen, shore up those relationships that I had, that maybe I took advantage of, took for granted, or didn't realize that I was allowing those really bad things that I saw and heard every day for 27 years to weigh me down, you know?
I'm really impressed by the thought process through this. You know, I'm one of those people who's been on the receiving end of a notification, like you talked about. And I loved that the officers were so kind and so thoughtful through that process. And I think so often we miss out and we don't understand how hard that is on their side of things. And so I really appreciate that. Um, one of the things about the story that kind of ties into that is when Linda meets Tracy, the surviving victim in the story. And I just think, that's such a healing process. And I think that is really interesting that you included that.
Well, I didn't just make that up. I know that it would be great if I had that wonderful of an imagination, but um, I wrote what I knew and what had happened to me. And there is a lady named Tracy. I did change all of the names. I made sure to change a lot of the physical descriptions as well so that no one would get their feelings hurt or be offended. But there was a lady named Tracy that survived that horrible, horrific. I don't even have words for it, that attack that happened to her. And she truly did hand me tissues over her shoulder at that funeral. And she did meet me in the courthouse and hand me paper towels. That's the truth. And what an amazing person she is to have survived all of that, and to go on. And I think about her all the time. Um, and I wonder, just like I do with Colleen Hofford's family, the lady that was beheaded in that deal. And I think about there's so many people that are affected when things like that happen. It could be just a traffic collision. Um, and a lot of times people don't realize that first responders, obviously, the IMSA personnel, the ambulance people that show up, the people at the hospital, obviously um, the people that work for the Department of Transportation that have to be out there to set up cones or to block off a lane, or the helicopter pilots that come in to fly a victim out, obviously the troopers. There's just so many people that are involved and that are affected by each and every tragedy that happens every single day. And yes, it's important that law enforcement or anybody that has to deal with that kind of stuff is super tough and can deal with it. And I'm going to tell you right now, I have said this over and over and over. My tears will never compromise my strength. And who I am, I'm a crybaby. I've always been a crybaby. It's just who I am. But when I would work and I would show up at a fatality scene, and there is a person on the ground that their whole life has ended because somebody that they cared about had been killed, and I could cry with them. And a lot of people didn't understand that, but I didn't care. I know I'm an ugly crier, but it would never change anything. It doesn't change anything. I just think that at the end of the day, I can look myself in the mirror and say, I'm true to myself. And that's all that matters. And when I wrote this story, knowing that who it was going to benefit, I can't tell you how many law enforcement people, not just Highway Patrol, Oklahoma Highway Patrol, but law enforcement people nationwide that I know that have lost somebody, a law enforcement professional in the line of duty. They want us to be human. They don't understand robots. They don't understand someone that can say, you went through the academy with my husband or my son, and it doesn't make you cry when you think about them getting murdered. It doesn't bother you that they got run over on the interstate while they were just trying to, help somebody change a flat tire. So I think being real and being honest is not only important as a human being, but it's important when you write that you have characters that are real. I mean, if you don't, it's going to be flat and people are going to see through it. And I'm not saying my stuff is great. I'm just saying I hope that when people read my writing, they say this is a real character. And the reason why they feel that way is because it's somebody who, throws up when they're extremely nervous, or maybe they pee their pants, or whatever the situation is, or maybe they cry at the drop of a hat. They cry. They're a community crier. You cry, I don't know you, but you cry, I cry because I'm right here with you. Or I'm the person that is here telling you that someone you love is never coming home. And does it affect me? Not necessarily, but it affects me because I'm here with you. And that part of it, and seeing your anguish and seeing your pain, that affects me. And I think that's the kind of writing that I want to put out there into the world. And I'm hoping that not everything that I write that gets published, it will make me cry when I talk about it. But you know what? If it does, it's not the end of the world, because that's just who I am. And I hope that people that come to and support this incredible thing that Rona Weatherford is doing, I really hope that they will acknowledge the contribution that law enforcement, not just the ones that are killed in the line of duty, but the ones that work day in and day out. Maybe they work 30 years and nothing ever happens to them and they go to the house, but all of that stuff does wear and tear on their heart and their soul, and it affects every relationship in their life, whether they acknowledge it or ever get help for it or not. But I do really think that this is an important, this event that's going on. I really think this U.S. Marshal event, I just think it's so special and so wonderful. And so it was important to me. It is important to me that we acknowledge those contributions and those sacrifices that men and women around the world, but especially here in the United States, do and give and contribute every single day.
That's beautiful. I think that you hit on that idea of sort of emotional honesty. Like you said, maybe their incident is not affecting you the same way, but you can still validate the fact that this is a tragic incident and their emotions are valid. And that's, I think, also what makes your writing so intriguing and draws people to it, is that you can feel that kind of emotional honesty in the characters, and that's coming through the writing. So I love that this story is going in this anthology. I think it's a perfect tie-in. Like you said, the anthology is going to benefit U.S. Marshals and their museum, and it's an amazing cause, and it's a great thing they're doing. Did you consider the themes that you're weaving in kind of tying to the U.S. Marshals, things like justice or service or resilience? How did that influence your choices you made when you were writing this?
So laugh if you want to, but I don't even really know how I came about the story. That I didn't really set out to do that. I have had numerous people over the years tell me, you need to write about this incident that happened to you. And every time I tried it, I couldn't do it. Every time I sat down to write about it, I just wanted to punch somebody in the face. I was just angry about it. I'm still angry about the whole thing. So I couldn't ever write nonfiction about this incident. When I die, you guys may read something that I've written, maybe scribbled out in a journal about it. But I don't know that I'll ever get to that point to do it. And I sure didn't think about, I knew that we were doing something for the U.S. Marshals. And originally, when I asked my buddy, that he's a retired trooper as well, if he would let me use him as a character, I had the idea of using him as a U.S. Marshal. And I thought that was going to be my only tie-in, if you will. is to have this female protagonist and having this issue that happened to her. And I really didn't even think about her getting back into law enforcement until I guess when I realized, oh, I've got like, I think the word count was like 6,000 words or 5,000 words. I'm like 7,500 or 8,000 words in. I'm like, okay, I've got too much. I've got to start cutting back. And how is this thing going to end? And I really hadn't even, I don't know if you're a pantser, if you write, I'm a pantser. I don't think about I don't have a formula. I just start writing. And oftentimes I will just write and write and write and write. And then I have to cut a whole bunch, but I'm okay with cutting stuff. I don't mind as long as I'm not, cutting too much of what I want to get across. At the end of the day, when I get to the very, very end of it, like on this story, I did feel like a little bit of it at the very end was rushed but I wanted to make it very clear that she decided, she had this epiphany, and she decides she's going to get back into law enforcement, and she's going to do U.S. Marshals, and then she has the little pictures, and I wanted to make sure that people saw that she realized, just like I did, almost at the very end, oh my God, this is the reason I've been doing this whole thing. I started here, all this crazy stuff happened, but here I am back at the beginning. And this is what matters. This is what really, really matters. And it was her in her dorm room in Glencoe going through her training to be a U.S. Marshal. And so, wouldn't that have been fun? I'm sure my mom would have loved that. I know she would have loved it if I had been on the news desk. Maybe not so much all the other stuff, and especially not the bad language, but she would have thought that would have been super cool.
Betsy, thanks so much for sharing so much of yourself with us. Through the story and through sharing with us today. I laughed a couple of times as you were saying you were a crybaby because right here. I'm that same person. I get really emotional around things. So thank you for sharing that with us today. We've had so much fun being with you.
And I'm so, so grateful to hear you say that. I know that a lot of people, men especially, don't understand the tears. If I start tearing up about something, they start taking off. I used to have a little Chihuahua boy dog that would do the same thing. A little girl dog would run to me, a little boy dog would run away. And I'm like, figures. And I hate it. I hate that because we all have the same emotions. God gave us all the same emotions. He gave us all the same stuff. You can deny it if you want. And my best friend is a woman, and I don't think I've ever seen her cry. We've been best friends since I was like 14 or 15. I don't think I've ever seen her cry, which seems really weird. Like maybe she's a robot, but I just think that, so it's not just men that are like that. I know that there are women that are like that too. But I think being honest with yourself and being honest with your writing when you write is what makes people, it brings us together. And for this type of a anthology, it was important to me to, yes, have it set in the West, and yes, have a female protagonist, because I think that kind of stuff's pretty important. But also it is rough. It's a rough character. It's rough content. It's rough language. It's rough all the way around, which is why I think that it fits in this anthology so well. And I'm very grateful for Casey and for Rona Weatherford, and obviously for Rebus for picking my story to be in here, to be included. But back to what you said, Alan, when I said my tears don't compromise my strength, understand I stole that from a Kleenex commercial several years ago. So that's not a Betsy-ism that none of that is me. That is something, but as soon as I heard it, I said, yes, oh my gosh, yes, yes. So I just think it's important just as a human being to be real. Just be real.
I think that you're right. I think it's really important for us to just embrace who we are, be authentic, and just roll with it. I
Yep.
think is a great phrase. So, well, thank you again for being with us today. We're so glad that you're in this anthology, and we're really excited to roll it out and to be able to, get these stories in front of people. And yours is one of them that I just loved, and is just an amazing story. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for saying that. And thank you for having me. Thank you for putting up with me, both of you.